scrolling on TikTok, thinking it's been, 5 minutes, only to look up and realize a whole hour has just vanished? Yeah, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're going to dig into a huge scientific review that pulled together 26 different studies to figure out what that endless scroll is actually doing to our brains and our mental health. So, let's get into it. First off, let's just wrap our heads around the sheer scale we're talking about here. TikTok isn't just some popular app. It's a global phenomenon with over 1 billion active users. That is a truly staggering number of people interacting with this super powerful algorithm-driven content every single day. So, what's the impact of that?
And that really brings us to the big question, right? We all scroll, but where's the line? When does it go from being a harmless way to kill some time to something that's actually taking away from our lives and our well-being? That's exactly what this research wanted to figure out.
To get to that answer, here's the plan. We're going to start by defining what we even mean by the TikTok phenomenon. Then, we'll get into the science of why it's so hard to look away. After that, we'll connect the dots to mental health, look at who's most vulnerable, and finally, check out what the experts say we should do about it. All right, first up, the TikTok phenomenon. Before we can really talk about the effects, we've got to be super clear on how the researchers are even defining the problem.
So the key term they use is problematic TikTok use. This isn't just casual scrolling. It's a pattern where you're spending so much time on the app that you start, blowing off your responsibilities. But, and this is a really important distinction, you technically still have control. You could stop, even if it feels almost impossible.
Which, of course, raises the question, if we can control it, why is it so ridiculously hard to stop? So for our next section, let's get into the actual science behind the scroll. Okay, so the engine driving all of this is what's called a positive feedback loop, and it's brutally effective. It works like this. You watch something, the algorithm learns, aha, they like that. Then it serves you something else it knows you'll like. That keeps you watching longer, which gives the algorithm even more data to perfect its next suggestion. It's a cycle designed for one thing, and one thing only, to keep you watching. This constant stream of perfect content is engineered to get you into a state that psychologists call a flow experience. And I bet this sounds familiar. It's that feeling of being completely sucked in, so focused and entertained that you totally lose track of time. The outside world just kind of melts away, and yeah, an hour feels like 5 minutes. And this isn't just in your head. You can literally see it in the brain. fMRI studies show that when you watch these super personalized videos, it lights up the exact same reward systems that are involved in other addictive behaviors we know all about. It's a measurable, biological response. So we know why it's so captivating. But now for the big so what. Let's move on and explore the real-world impact of the scroll, the documented connection to our mental health. This quote from one of the studies in the review is, well, it's pretty stunning. We're not talking about scrolling for hours on end. The researchers found that after just 20 minutes on TikTok, people reported a significant, measurable spike in their feelings of both depression and anxiety. And to put some hard numbers on that, significant meant that depression scores went up by 12% and anxiety levels jumped by 15%. That is a massive psychological shift in a super short amount of time. Now, it's also important to understand there's a spectrum here. We talked about problematic use, but the research also identifies something way more severe, TikTok use disorder. And this is where that line gets crossed. This is when a person loses control, when the use becomes compulsive and they just can't stop, even when it's clearly causing harm in their life. So all of this leads to a really critical question. Does this affect everyone the same way? Let's dive into our next section and see what the data says about which groups seem to be the most at risk. Well, when it comes to age, the research is crystal clear. While about a third of all adults use TikTok, that number absolutely skyrockets to over 85% for people aged 18 to 29. This makes young adults, by far, the most plugged in and maybe the most vulnerable group. And when the studies zoomed in on problematic use among college students, they found a pretty significant gender gap. More than 2/3 of the students who were struggling with problematic use were female. But it's not just about demographics. The review also flagged some key psychological factors. Things like pre-existing loneliness, low self-esteem, or a tendency to procrastinate can all make someone more susceptible. So can things like higher levels of neuroticism or being in a lower socioeconomic bracket. Okay, so after looking at all of that pretty concerning data, what can we actually do about any of it? Our final section is all about solutions and laying out a path forward for building some healthier digital habits.
The researchers basically say we need to tackle this from all sides. From the top down, they're calling for things like building digital literacy right into school lesson plans. At home, it's about parents guiding your kids' use and setting clear boundaries. For us as individuals, it could be as simple as taking regular digital detox breaks. And for the scientific community, it's a huge call to action for more long-term research so we can understand the effects over years, not just minutes.
And when you put all this research together, it really leaves us with one final powerful question. We know that the algorithm is an absolute masterpiece of engineering, designed flawlessly to capture and hold our attention. But it forces us to ask, who then is designing it for our well-being? And that's really the core tension at the heart of this entire conversation.